and Alberto is going to introduce Graham. So go ahead, Alberto.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. And yeah, I'm excited presenting Graham and Solo. I've heard of him and his company, maybe one of the first ones to hear about this secret project. Super exciting. So Graham is working on a completely reimagining platform for tracking for electrical trucks that is a complete rethinking. And I was really enthused and excited about to hear about that, because it wasn't just another tracking company just building on top of some like legacy systems still inherited from the 70s. This was like, let's stop fighting the day-to-day problems that we have in electrical tracking, and by having a top-down system level rethinking about the approach. So really, really interesting, really powerful. I think I'm always a big fan of this system level rethinking of architectural works. And so excited actually to present Graham, and I hope it goes really well.
By the way, I was very clever, Nick, for you to situate Graham right after Vern.
I noticed that.
Or vice versa. I guess they were going to be the other way, but anyway, you guys should talk to each other. Bonny, Doon. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So let me go ahead and share this. All right. Can you guys see? Oops. Sorry, just got a little ahead of myself. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Graham Doorley, and thank you, Alberto, for the nice introduction. So I'm the founder and CEO of Solo Advanced Vehicle Technologies. And before I begin, I just want to give a quick background of who I am. So I'm an automotive engineer. I've been in the industry for the better part of 2 decades now. I was actually hired on by Elon early on in the days of Tesla. Worked on the Model S chassis and body structure. Was there for a couple years. Actually saw it from a blank CAD screen all the way through to production at the Fremont factory. Helped set up the Fremont factory in the early days. And as many people probably have said, Tesla tends to burn you out. So after a couple years of Tesla, I decided, it was time to get out of Tesla. But I learned a lot about electric vehicles. Wanted to stay in the automotive industry and really go to like the next level of automotive design. And to me, that was autonomy. And this was about 8 years ago. And at the time, the only people really doing autonomy at that time was Google. And so I joined the Google self-driving car project, which came to be known later on as Waymo. So I was there, got hired on to do the little bubble car. So that was the little kind of koala looking thing. Worked on sensor analysis, sensor placement integration, worked on that car, worked on their Chrysler Pacifica, the Jaguar I-Pace. And while I was there, I also got to start working on their heavy trucks. So I realized that transportation, so tasks, if you will, wasn't really the best use of autonomy. It's a good use of autonomy, but logistics is a better use of autonomy, right? So the use cases, when you think about logistics, specifically long haul trucking, is just a better use case. It's easier to drive on highways. It's harder to drive on surface streets in cities. And so a couple engineers and myself, actually like 3 of us, decided that logistics was kind of low hanging fruit and Waymo should really be part of that. And at the time, they didn't really want to be part of it. They wanted to focus on tasks. So we got some funds from a sympathetic manager and started a skunkworks project, if you will, and bought a Peterbilt 579. We took the sensors from their task platform, put them on a 579 and built the first autonomous heavy truck on an existing platform. This was about 5 years ago. And after that, I spent the next several years iterating on this design, working with various Peterbilts as well as Cascadias. And during that time, I realized that there was a problem, right? So you have all this advanced technology, much of which Alberto is working on, and you're putting it onto existing platforms. And so the use of these existing human-centric heavy trucks for autonomy is inefficient and is compromised. So what does that mean, inefficient and compromised? Well, the obvious thing is inefficient because it's not very fuel efficient for a lot of reasons, but more importantly, it's not data efficient and it's not scalable. And so when you talk about autonomy, you talk about sensors, right? You talk about the AI part. And when you go to stick these sensors on a human-driven truck, you have to compromise it because you can't stick the sensors where they need to go. They don't get the stiffness that they need to give you the data that you need in order to drive autonomously well. And so this is a problem. And it's not a scalable solution. These trucks are old. They don't really fit the model that we're trying to build. And they're really expensive to outfit with sensors. So when you buy these old diesel trucks from the 70s and 80s and you stick these high-tech sensors on them, it costs a lot of money. So it's not a scalable solution, but it's okay for testing. So we realized there was an opportunity here. Technology advanced to the point where autonomous trucks are being deployed today. So many of you have heard and seen in the news the last decade or so, a lot of people have been working on this. So Too Simple, Waymo, Argo, Aurora, Embark, Kodiak, just name a few. These are the big AI players, are currently driving trucks in the southern United States, so Texas, Arizona. They're trying to do it in Florida. They're going to be eventually doing it in California. So these systems currently are deployed in the field. They're driverless trucks, right? But they're dependent upon these antiquated platforms, like I mentioned. And so they're truly using old technology. Like these trucks have solid axles and leaf springs like wagons did in the 1800s. I mean, they're really, really basic and haven't changed much. So what the industry needs is it needs a platform to usher it into the autonomous age. And so I ask a question to everybody here. If you were to build a modern truck, so start from scratch, right? Take a clean sheet of paper and build a truck from the ground up. What would you build? And as an engineer, the possibilities here are endless, right? So it's truly like playing in a sandbox. You can survey the landscape of all current technology and architect a completely new platform that's really exciting. And this is a platform the industry truly needs. So what would you build? Well, you'd build the Solo ST1 Heavy. And this is going to be the very first ground up autonomous heavy truck platform. So this is completely new. It's not based on anything before it. It doesn't carry any of the baggage from heritage designs. Like we don't need chrome smokestacks. We don't care about big diesel engines, right? This is a completely autonomous, not human-driven platform. There's no person in this. And we're taking a fresh look at what it means to build a heavy truck, like only a startup can do. So when you take everything away and you start over again, you would get the ST1 Heavy. So this is going to be the safest, greenest, and most advanced truck ever built. It'll have the most advanced powertrain. It'll have the most advanced architecture. It'll have the most advanced aerodynamics. And it's truly going to be the most efficient truck out in the world has ever seen. It's going to create a step change in the industry, right? So you're looking at an industry that's very old and archaic. We're going to blow it away. And so I want to get kind of under the hood a bit, yeah, pun intended, of what it means, like what's the technology going into the ST1. And obviously I can only share so much because we have a lot of IP around this, but what I can say is there's kind of fundamental aspects of the truck that are truly important. First and foremost is the structure. So when you build a platform to be autonomous, you really need to build it from the ground up to be autonomous, right? So you have to build an autonomous truck to be autonomous. I know that sounds a little silly, but you have to architect in the sensor placements, the stiffness and structure for those sensors. That's really important. Where these sensors live on a truck, it's what makes it autonomous, right? And I spent the better part of the last decade defining where these sensors go on heavy trucks. So you get rid of that human, and now you can put these sensors in optimal locations, actually decreasing the amount of sensors you need to drive autonomously. So you can kind of have a minimum sensor suite, if you will. And that's very important. Also, redundancy. So in order to have an autonomous vehicle perform effectively and safely, you have to have a redundant architecture. So much like in the airline industry, how you've got multiple systems to control, say, control surfaces or engines, they're redundant systems, you have to have the same thing for autonomous vehicle. So both from a safety aspect, but also from a reliability aspect. So the architecture needs to be made to be redundant in both braking, steering, power, cooling, all the thermal, the sensor cleaning, all that management has to be redundant. And so that's going to be built into our platform. We're going to be the very first Class 8 truck to have a fully redundant architecture. Also, important part to mention about the Solo model is we are software agnostic. So we are not doing the driver. We're going to leave that to the Waymos, the Argos, the Too Simples, the Embarks, the Auroras, the Kodiaks of the world. They've been doing this for a very long time. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I understand really well how difficult the software problem is. They have solved it. and they're doing a good job solving it. So our job is to give them what they need to progress their solution out and commercialize it, and that's a new platform. So we'll be partnering with one of these or all of these software companies to provide the driver. A couple other aspects is the powertrain. We're going to have a revolutionary powertrain in the SD1. Again, if you're not stuck with that heritage design, you're not band-aiding solutions on, you can create a brand new powertrain. And so this is going to be a battery electric range extended model. I can't get into the nuances of exactly what it is here. However, happy to talk offline about what our model is going to be, but it's going to be revolutionary, right? This is going to be significantly more efficient than anything on the road. I mean, just looking at diesels to begin with, and I understand there's a kind of a smattering of electric trucks coming out. So there is a push to be EV, but this will be one step beyond that. But when you compare it to strictly diesel right now, this is predominantly what's out there, their diesel engines are at most about 30% efficient. However, when you look at an electric drive, it's about 95% efficient. So needless to say, there's a lot of efficiency gained by just truly looking at and redesigning that powertrain. However, we can't forget a big one, and that's aerodynamics. When you get rid of the human in a truck, you can now shape it any way you want. So when we actually recently recruited, I'll talk a little bit more about him in a second, the former head of aerodynamics at Tesla, who worked on the Tesla Semi, Rob Palin. So he's on board now, and he's going to help us with our aero. So we're looking at this holistically, like what are the craziest things we could do from an aerodynamics perspective to make this the most efficient truck in the world? And what you're seeing here, these are renderings that we had early on. So this is not representing necessarily the finished concept, but the idea being, without a human, you don't have these flat glass windows you have to deal with. You don't have this cab you have to deal with. So let's make this really slippery. So we're going to use cutting edge aerodynamics from Formula One, from all different aspects of the aerodynamics. And we're going to use active aero as well to make this the most efficient truck on the road. So I've spoken a bit about our team. You kind of know who I am, but fundamentally, who are we at Solo? So our team helped develop the first autonomous heavy truck, as I mentioned. And we've got experience in all aspects of electric vehicle technology, heavy truck, self-driving technology, safety regulations. We worked at Tesla, we worked at Waymo, BMW, a bunch of other companies, big kind of tech companies you know about. And the point is, we helped develop the specifications requirements for autonomous trucks and essentially defined what it means to be an autonomous heavy truck. You can't just go open a book and look at the FMVSS rules and say, okay, this is how you create an autonomous truck. That doesn't exist, but it exists in here because I've helped do it the last 5 years. So I was literally in charge of defining and what it means to be a heavy truck and how to integrate sensors on heavy trucks to be autonomous. So we deeply understand the use cases for heavy truck autonomy and the nuances goes into designing them. So a lot of people talk about what it means to be autonomous and how you solve the autonomy problem. Solving 80% of the autonomy use cases is honestly kind of the easy part, right? It's understanding those long tails, as I like to say in the industry, i.e. the other 20%, that takes the most time. And we've been off working in those long tails for the better part of a decade, where most companies don't even understand the first 80% of it. So when you get down into the weeds of what it takes, we understand all of that. And that's what we're going to bring to the Solo team. So when I talk about a bit more about who the core team is right now, you're hearing from me now. So I'm the founder and CEO. We have Chris Bossy, he's our CFO. He's been around running companies and helping run startups and found and fund startups for 30 years. So he's well experienced. We've got Dave Lyons as our powertrain engineering advisor. I think he's on the call now. He'll also be on one of the talks coming up on the 17th. So Dave was the former chief engineer at Tesla, and he also co-founded and helped Peloton AI, if you guys remember those guys, a while back. So he's well-versed in both EV architecture, vehicle architecture, and heavy trucks. Eric Kananj and Andreas Bauer, these are our current principal engineers. They worked with me at Waymo, both were at Tesla prior, bring loads of experience and enthusiasm to the project. And I mentioned Rob Palin, he's our head aerodynamicist. He was Tesla's former head of aerodynamics. I knew him when I was at Tesla, and also he recently did the Tesla Semi, which I think quotes a drag coefficient of 0.36, which we're looking to beat. And 0.36, by the way, most trucks have a drag coefficient about 0.8 to 0.1. So they did a great job there. So he brings a lot of knowledge and interesting aspects that we're going to use when we're looking at the SD1. And I've now officially been able to announce, as of a few days ago, we are funded by Trucks VC. They are investment partners of ours. Both Riley and Jeff are super excited to be a part of this. In fact, Jeff almost fell off his chair when I told him about this. he was super excited. So we're really happy to have them on board and help us in our journey. So kind of to wrap up, there's really only one company developing a completely autonomous heavy truck platform for the future, and that's the SD1. So Solo with the SD1 is going to be the very first fully autonomous ground up truck. It's really going to move the needle in the industry. We're really excited to bring this to market. And that's it. Yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have. There's a lot more coming. I realize this was sort of top level. That was done kind of on purpose because there's quite a bit of IP behind this, but I'm happy to talk offline to anybody about anything specific you want to know. We are in the final days of our seed round, and we'll be looking to do our Series A funding as well. So I will be there in person on the 17th. So if anybody has any specific questions they want to ask me then, feel free. And I know we have a Q&A session set up afterwards. But in the meantime, if anybody online now has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Graham. That was great.
You're welcome.
That's a lot to cover.
It's a mouthful.
And you, I guess you're just coming out of stealth, so you're hitting everybody cold. But it's very exciting what you're embarking on. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the next steps for you coming out of stealth? In other words, you've got some funding now, and you're going to do your seed, obviously, and your A1. But what kind of relationships are key to your success? What do you need to do in order to build new relationships?
Sure. So what we're looking to do now is build out our supply base. And so obviously, in addition to our Series A, what truly, when you talk about vehicle design and vehicle engineering, I've built vehicles in the past, as have all of my team. And one part that goes overlooked in the early stages is understanding your supply base and getting to know your tier ones. So we've actually taken the step of starting to build those relationships with like the Bosches and Continentals of the world, all of that because you need the steering gears, the braking systems, you don't want to invent all that stuff. And this is what they're really good at. So we're looking to really make those connections and also hopefully along the way get some strategic partnerships on both the tier one side, and obviously we're looking to partner with the autonomy companies, right? So we want to build that relationship. We've spoken to a few already, but we'll be speaking to more because we want that AI driver to use the Solo truck.
Right. And so obviously there are a lot of pieces of this puzzle that you're going to outsource. You talked about the autonomy piece. And you're talking about certain things from Bosch, but what is inside and what is outside? What are you going to keep inside your company, and what are you going to go to outside parties to help you do?
Yeah, so we want to develop. Well, we're going to architect the system ourselves, but things like I mentioned, the braking systems and steering systems, those we're going to look for outside partners. As we go down the road of developing, so I should step back a bit, we're doing our mule development now. So our test platform is what we're in the midst of developing. And so that will define better what we want to have long-term for powertrain, for steering systems, for kind of the compute thermal management, the sensor structure, all that. And as we get into the weeds of this, we'll kind of survey the landscape of what tier ones offer, and if it meets our requirements or what we're going to start to need to develop on our own. So it's a little early to say exactly what we're going to buy versus build at this point, but I suspect we'll leverage tier ones for a lot of like the major components as mentioned, axles, brakes, tires, all that kind of stuff. When it gets into the specifics of powertrain, compute, any of the embedded stuff, as well as the structure, we may start doing more of that ourselves, as we've seen a lot of the other startup companies, Tesla, Rivian, and those start vertically integrating their own. Obviously, you've mentioned Vern as well. I'd like to speak to them because we're going to be talking about different alternative energy sources as well for our truck.